So Monday, January 5th, 2026, I was terribly confused about the meaning of compassion when I came to Al-Anon. I thought it meant making excuses for the addict or covering bad checks. Al-Anon helped me to find another word for this behavior. It's called enabling. I learned that when I cleaned up the consequences of an addict's behavior, I enabled the addict to continue gaming comfortably and acting out without having to pay the price. A more compassionate way to respond to those I love might be to allow them to face the consequences of their actions, even when it causes them pain. How do I know whether a particular action is enabling? While this is not always clear, I find it helpful to look carefully at my motives. Am I trying to interfere with the natural consequences of a loved one's choices? Am I trying to do for someone what they could do for themselves? Am I doing what I think is best for me? Do I resent what I am doing? If so, is it really a loving choice? Sometimes the most compassionate thing I can do is to let others take responsibility for their behavior. So today's reminder. Today I will remember that I have choices, and so does the addict. I will make the best choice I can and allow others in my life to do the same without interference. I must learn to give those I love the right to make their own mistakes and recognize them as theirs alone. And that's from A1 Al-Anon Faces Alcoholism. Okay, so one of the things that I've discovered along the way is there are certain people that literally, because of their temperament, cannot take ownership of their actions if anyone else is involved. So I'll give you the example of a parent helping a child with a science project. And so the parent helps, and the young person doesn't really feel like the science project is theirs. They can't take ownership of it because, mom or dad helped in any way. All right. And this really has to do with the temperament of that particular individual. Now, in the case of an addict, so if this child was an addict, you would see the same attitude acted out. They literally cannot take responsibility for the consequences of their choices and actions if someone else is involved in it in any way, shape, or form. And involvement can be posture, tone, words, anyone trying to influence someone in another way, um, anyone trying to rescue someone interferes with that individual's very vastly important ability to take responsibility for their own choices. So, um, this speaks to ownership. It's really important that there is a subset of individuals that can't own anything if someone else is involved in the decision-making process. So what I like to tell the parents, usually the moms, is that you don't want to leave even a fingerprint of your own on the steering wheel of someone else's car. You do not want to do anything to influence their choices at all. Don't do it. And definitely don't do it if they have the disposition to be an addict, if you have addiction in your family, or if they are an addict. You will interfere with their process of becoming an adult. And sometimes I sadly say this to mothers of 50-year-olds. Sometimes I say this, I say it a lot to mothers of teenagers. And a lot of times we have a conversation about when responsibility comes in, and some of these parents are so lost along the way. They don't realize that, we really keep our kids safe from 0 to 10. And from 10 to 18, we watch and allow them to make mistakes in their household so that by the time they get to be 18, they can make better choices. Now, that's a normal pattern of maturity, and I know there's all sorts of anomalies and mental illness and other problems, but it doesn't matter what your kid is diagnosed with. I've worked in a children's hospital. Autonomy is critical for self-esteem. And if you get overly involved in your child's life, their self-esteem will be on the floor. So remember, ownership is critical for taking responsibility for our choices and for our actions. That's why you don't enable. That's why you don't rescue. That's why you don't fix. Fixing, rescuing, and enabling is about you being ashamed of outcome, whatever. We've got all sorts of problems going along there. Get into a 12-step program so you can deal with your issues, so you can stop involving yourself in a destructive way with the addict in your life, and probably the non-addicts in your life as well. All right. I hope you have a happy Monday. Blessings.